Welcome, friends, to the world's largest graveyard. Today, we will be doing Tier 1 of an iceberg that me and Bones made. For those who don't know what an iceberg is, let me explain. An iceberg is basically a list of topics on a subject, whereas the tiers get deeper, the topics also get deeper, or more interesting. And today, we made ours about ocean mysteries. Tier 1 will be our focus for today's video, and almost anyone will know quite a bit about these topics, but we will try to make them as interesting as possible. Many topics in the series will eventually get their own videos as they are far too complex to explain in just a few minutes. But before we get into that, please like, comment, subscribe, and share this video with a friend who's afraid of the ocean. And without further ado, allow me to drag you down to the world's largest graveyard. To kick off this iceberg video, we've decided to begin with Atlantis. We've all heard about Atlantis, but that doesn't make it any less interesting. An ancient Athenian lawmaker named Solon traveled to Egypt and was told the story of Atlantis. Solon also attempted to democratize sex with publicly funded brothels. But that's a story for a different day. Atlantis was a supposed island civilization that existed over 10,000 years ago, but was swallowed up by the ocean. In the years since, Plato relayed this story to us in his works, Timaeus and Crucius. People have been attempting to locate this lost civilization for generations with little to no success. Some interesting theories of its location are Antarctica, the Santorini caldera, and even the Sahara Desert, at a place known as the Ricat structure. To this day, we still have no clue if it ever exists, and we very well may never know. But a creature who would love to hide in the ruins of a drowned city is the Lochness Monster, first mentioned in the 7th century in a biography of St. Columba. This creature has been described as looking like a dragon or serpent. Although many of its sightings have been debunked as hoaxes, many still believe there is something hiding in the mini caves in the 56 square kilometer and up to 23 meter deep water. Some have said it's a plesiosaur living a little bit too long, roughly like 180 million years too long. DNA scans of the loch have identified numerous eels, so some people think it could have been really oversized eels. But no matter what, the theory of a huge creature going mostly undetected in Scotland's second largest lake is compelling. Our next creature has also been seen countless times, but no solid evidence of its existence has ever been found. Mermaids, or sea women, are fabled creatures of the sea modeled after the sirens and sea goddesses of ancient Greek and Roman mythology. Though the earliest known mention of these creatures was in ancient Assyria around 4th century BC, when the Assyrian goddess Atargatis turned into a mermaid. Thought to have a body with the top half of a woman and the bottom half of a fish. We've all seen The Little Mermaid though, so this probably comes as no surprise to you. They have lifespans of hundreds of years, and even sometimes said to have had magical powers, such as shape-shifting and weather control. Much like sirens, they lure sailors in with their beautiful singing, and if you see one at sea, it's considered an omen of an impending shipwreck. They also drown the infatuated men and eat them, or even turn them into mermen if they find a particularly attractive one. Another creature that spells certain death if encountered on the open seas is the Megalodon, the largest shark ever recorded, and the monster of the ancient seas. Roughly 23 million years ago, it was the apex predator in the world's largest graveyard. Many movies and theories have been made of this big tooth. What a lazy name. But the size of these massive beasts is unknown to this day. Scientists believe that they were between 33.5 feet long to as big as 80 feet long, with a mouth that is nearly 10 feet wide. but these numbers are only estimates based on the size of megalodon teeth found compared to modern great white sharks. Although many scientists still believe they are extinct, many people don't think that. But with how large the ocean is, we can never truly know. Somehow, our next subject would even make the megalodon's massive teeth chatter. The infamous Kraken. Originally derived from Scandinavian and Norwegian lore in the 1300s in the Overadres saga, where he was attacked by the gigantic creature that he called Halfguffa. But the idea of a Kraken was first put to paper in modern times by the Italian adventurer Francisco Negri in 1700. But the first physical description of this monster in the modern era was by Danish author Erik Pontoppidan, who described it as an octopus of tremendous size, known for pulling down ships. He described it as round, flat, and full of arms. The largest, most surprising thing of all animal creations. For centuries, scientists believed this was a silly sailor rumor, like mermaids. That is until 1873, when a fisherman off the coast of Newfoundland named Theophilus Picot, who was out rowing one day when his ship was reportedly attacked by a large animal with giant tentacles and a beak. Most would have chalked this up to another tall tale from a crazy sailor, but Picot managed to, with the help of his friendly axe, to chop off a 19-foot tentacle. That cemented the fact that there are large squid-like creatures in the ocean that are attacking boats. And in 2012, we might have finally captured the culprit on video. Watch our Humboldt squid video to hear a little bit about it. If you'd like a full video on it though, leave us a comment. The thing I find most interesting about the Kraken is that so many civilizations across so many seas have all reported the exact same thing for centuries now. But a massive entity like the Kraken, who drags ships underwater never to be seen again, would find a happy home in our next topic, the Bermuda Triangle, a loosely defined area between Bermuda, the southern tip of Florida, and Puerto Rico. Over most of recorded history, countless ships as well as airplanes go missing in this area. And although there are some explanations for that, we are choosing to focus on the more fun theories. Things like it could be home to the Kraken, or that Atlantis is located in the triangle and is so technologically advanced that they found a way to breathe underwater and even make advanced weaponry that shoots anything that gets too close. Or the fact that compasses malfunction when near the triangle. Or, my personal favorite, that aliens like to kidnap people over the triangle for research. Most things involving the triangle can be scientifically explained, but that doesn't make the theories any less fun. But something far less fun, and could even be the reason for the triangle's grisly history, is the Leviathan. A creature so scary and large that it has become synonymous with a large creature that is usually snake-like. The first depiction of this monstrosity is in Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, where it is mentioned 6 times and stated to be incredibly large with the ability to breathe fire and have impenetrable scales, with the only thing being able to defeat this creature is God himself. But that's not the only mention of a Leviathan-like creature. Dating back as far as recorded history goes, beasts like Lotan, Tiamat, Vertra, and Jormungandr. With so many cultures and religions across the world with these myths, makes you wonder how so many people from so many places and times, with entirely different cultures and languages, all came up with the same giant snake-like monster who will bring about the end of our world. Speaking of ends, that's the end of Tier 1. The fact that 80% of the ocean remains unexplored is the kind of thing that's hard to wrap your head around. We have lived on this planet as long as the human race has existed, and it seems nearly impossible to believe that we have hardly even scratched the surface. We've explored the surface of the moon more than our own ocean, and it really makes you wonder, what all could be hiding inside the unexplored depths? But another large mystery that hides its secrets in the depths is the Baltic Sea anomaly is interesting. In 2011, treasure hunters Peter Lindberg and Dennis Aberg found a weird anomaly using a sonar image of the bottom of the ocean in the Baltic Sea. The anomaly looks weird, and that's the issue. The treasure hunters and some tabloids have deemed that it is a crash UFO, and in light of some recent congressional hearings, they might not be too far off. But most experts believe it's some sort of rock formation that just looks a little funky. The interesting part is that the scientists believe that the way this thing has reached the Baltic Sea is because of a rogue iceberg that transported it there. They determined this through samples of the formation. But our next subject is even more dangerous than a potential UFO crash landing on the bottom of the ocean. The Lakes of Despair are a fitting name for the potential deadliest habitat on Earth. Brine pools are found at the bottom of the ocean because of the high salt content of the water, making it sink due to the weight. These are no small bodies of water either. Some in the Gulf of Mexico can even be 20 kilometers long. 200 million years ago, the Gulf was a shallow bit of water that was completely disconnected from the rest of the ocean. Eventually, when the water evaporated, it left behind a giant deposit of salt, roughly 8 kilometers deep. This salt layer is crushed by sediment and slowly creeps back out, causing massive amounts of salt to make large pools, creating the Lakes of Despair. These pools are so dense that fish and even submarines can float on top of them. What, you ask, would happen if a fish happened to swim into the brine pool? Almost instant death. The methane in the brine instantly kills almost anything that enters. The only thing that can live here is a specific species of mollusk. On a lighter note, it actually pickles any poor fish that does swim into it. Pickled fish, anyone? Or should I say pickled squid? Because our next subject is the big fin squid. This elusive species has only been known about for 20 years. It is a creepy looking creature that measures up to 10 meters long, made up mostly by its tentacles, which measure up to 8 meters long, and living at a depth of around 600 to 1300 meters in the Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans, making it the deepest squid ever recorded. Not much is known about this elusive cephalopod. What we do know is that they use bioluminescence to attract and ambush their prey, which is generally shrimp, copepods, and other small crustacean creatures. One creature that this shrimp should fear is the ningen, meaning human in Japanese, is a giant cryptid thought to reside in the icy waters of the Antarctic Ocean. Described as pale white humanoids with webbed hands and 2 massive whale fins instead of legs. Some speculate that this could be some sort of transitional species between humans and marine mammals of the distant past. The first account of the sightings of the ningen we could date back was to 2003, when a Japanese whaling and research ship were traveling off the coast of Antarctica. The sailors said they saw a large, pale and shiny creature measuring between 10 and 15 meters several times before diving back into the depths. Since then, there have been up to 30 different sightings, but no solid evidence to put forward. Unlike our next subject, which has been seen and documented, because in 1964, a ship known as the USNS Eltanin, which was the first ever dedicated Antarctic research vessel, took a suspicious picture at 3,900 meters deep near the bottom of the sea just west of Cape Horn in southern Chile. Originally, theories ranged from the strange, like a crashed alien ship's antenna, to what turned out to be completely mundane, because in 2003 it was identified as Chondrocladia conrescens, which is a carnivorous sponge. It uses the barbs on its stem to capture mostly crustaceans and then slowly devours them. But one thing that to this day we have no concrete explanation for is the bloop, detected in 1997 by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, was an ultra-low frequency noise picked up by hydrophones, which are just like underwater microphones, originating from a remote point in the South Pacific Ocean off the coast of South America. For being extremely loud, estimated 180 decibels, it is a wonder that we still don't really know where the noise came from. The leading scientific theory at the moment is that the sound was created by an iceberg breaking apart, causing an ice quake. But, for all we know, it could be a Kraken or some super Goliath that has yet to be observed. Maybe even one explanation for the bloop could be globsters, the term used to identify the seemingly unidentifiable. Nearly 10 have washed ashore since the 1800s and have been witnessed by thousands. The commonality amongst globsters is that they are massive, hard to cut, decompose slowly, and seem to be mutilated. Although science has claimed to know the answers for a few of these, they leave a lot to be pondered. But we will get into more specifics in later tiers, so be sure to look out for those videos. Overall, the globsters remind us that at the end of the day, we know so little about what lies in the depths, and that the only way we can truly learn is when the ocean chooses to relinquish its secrets back to us. That's the end of Tier 2. The Devil's Sea, or the Dragon's Triangle, is a 700,000 square kilometer, or 37 New Jersey-sized sections of the Pacific Ocean, located between Japan, Guam, and the Philippines. Much like the Bermuda Triangle, it is known for its very mysterious disappearances. There have been many disappearances in this sinister area of the Pacific Ocean, including a Japanese research ship with 31 people vanishing, a Korean freighter in 1954, and a Soviet oil tanker in 1970. Like the Bermuda Triangle, there are plenty of theories for why this area seems particularly dangerous. Some could be considered outlandish. It's noted that erratic weather and rogue waves are common in this stretch of the Pacific Ocean, but that's no fun. I think it could be a Leviathan hiding in the deep, Macho Man Randy Savage, or maybe aliens using the Dragon's Triangle to pick up their newest test subjects. Speaking of things that aliens may have left, we have the Yonagi Monument is a ziggurat-like structure off the coast of Yonaguni Island in Japan. This large structure, which is 165 feet tall and 65 feet wide, or roughly 15 grave diggers, and completely submerged underwater. Although many scientists and scholars have been there, reports seem to vary. Some say it's obviously a man-made structure due to the symmetry of the architecture and some carvings in the stone. Meanwhile, others who visited claim that it's a natural occurring structure that isn't really symmetrical and that all the carvings just look like generic scratch marks. Those who believe this is man-made think it is roughly 5,000 years old and is believed to be a forgotten structure from Mu or Lemuria, 2 lost continents. Getting consumed by the sea must be terrifying, which leads me to submechanophobia is an irrational fear of man-made objects submerged in the water, like shipwrecks and oil rigs, similar to thalassophobia or megalohydrothalassophobia. Who even comes up with these? Which is the fear of the ocean and fear of large things in the water, respectively. This one is focused on man-made objects specifically, though. Theories of the origin for this phobia range from the evolutionary response to the fear of drowning, the unnatural sight of man-made objects left in the depth, and the creepy juxtaposition of the living ocean with the deathly remains of what we have created. Although some may fear our inventions, they undoubtedly help us in situations like the HMS Serpent. In 1948, Captain P. Mquay of the HMS Daedalus reported seeing an enormous serpent coming out of the water near him and pressed its head against his ship. Captain Mquay was quoted as saying, "The head was, without a doubt, that of a snake." And his lieutenant said, "The appearance of its head, which with the back fin was the only portion of the animal visible. It was long, pointed, and flattened at the top, perhaps 10 feet in length, the upper jaw projecting considerably." When evolutionary biologist Gary Galbraith decided to investigate, he said, "There is no doubt that something remarkable passed by that ship on an August afternoon. The accounts agree that the animal was swimming along with its head fully out of the water much of the time." Creepy. Modern scientists believe it was a sea whale due to the way that they swim. But I ask you, dear viewers, don't you think that a crew of lifelong sailors would know what a whale looks like? All we know about that fateful day in August is that the crew of the Daedalus saw something that a group of experienced sailors could not describe very well. Another sea creature that is hard to describe is the Schaefer anglerfish. In 2019, during the deep sea exploration, scientists discovered a rather peculiar fish. This funny little guy is pretty weird looking, but even more weird is how it has evolved its fins over time to be kind of like feet. Yeah, think about that. They have these cute little feet fins, and they use them to walk across the bottom of the ocean. Who knows, maybe in a couple million years these things will find a way to come on land. The polar opposite of these cute cuddly fish are eels. These disgusting fiends just gross me out in a way I cannot even describe. They're like sea snakes, but with teeth, and I just can't. Anyways, eels are generally weird. From the American eel's life cycle to the Moray eel's 2 jaws. But the reason these scumbags are on this beautiful iceberg is due to the fact that we have no idea how the species Anguilla mate. We have no clue how these eels do the do. It has never been observed, and in fact we have never even found a single egg, which makes these abominations even more freaky to me. Speaking of mysteries we don't know about, Amelia Earhart. In 1937, Amelia Earhart, along with her navigator Fred Noonan, attempted to fly around the world at the equator. Earhart would have been the first woman to circumvent the globe, but I'm sure you knew all that. After refueling in New Guinea, she made her way to Howland Island, a tiny 2-mile wide island, which is as long as 10,560 fruit by the foots. Sadly, the 2 adventurers never made it to this island, and following a massive air and sea search, they were declared dead in 1939. Following Occam's razor, the simplest explanation would be that they ran out of fuel on their way to the island and simply fell into the ocean and perished soon after. Another interesting theory, though, is that they crashed near another uninhabited island, Gardner Island, and survived for weeks or even months. There's some evidence supporting this theory because in 1940, a British colonial officer, Jared Gallagher, found a sexton box on Gardner Island that matched the make and model of Fred Noonan's. In 1941, human remains were found that matched Earhart's measurements. Unfortunately, these remains were lost though. For days after their disappearance, distress calls were heard that could have been originated from the island, but the signals were too weak to pinpoint the exact location. Since 1989, 9 expeditions to this island by TIGAR, the International Group of Historic Aircraft Recovery, have possibly located the landing gear of the infamous Lockheed Electra and a piece of glass and aluminum. Ultimately, though, we will never truly know what happened in the unforgiving vastness that is the ocean. Could be aliens, really, or even coconut crabs. The Cause 2, also known as the Ghost Yacht, was a nearly 10-meter or 768 bald-faced hornet-long catamaran found floating off the coast of northern Australia. The crew consisted of 3 men named Derek Batten, Peter Tunstead, and James Tunstead, who were relatively experienced sailors. The ship departed on April 15, 2007. The first signs of trouble were on April 18th, when a helicopter found the Cause 2 floating adrift near the Great Barrier Reef. Then, on the 20th, authorities finally found the vessel and said that things on board were strange. For starters, there was silverware and food sitting out seemingly ready to be eaten, as well as a laptop that was still on and the engine running. The only signs on the boat of distress were that the sails were very torn up and that the life raft went missing, although authorities could not confirm if the life raft was ever there to begin with. When a forensic investigator got a good look at the vessel on the 21st, he noted that the GPS records of them leaving, things seemed to be fine. Then, a few hours later into the trip, the boat just started drifting at random. They also found a recording of the men on the ship, but the only thing of real note is that the sea was a bit choppy and that none of the men were wearing life vests. The coroner's report is where things get even weirder, though, because he claims that James Tunstead reached over the side of the boat to untangle his fishing line and then fell into the ocean. Then, for some unknown reason, Peter jumped in to help instead of throwing a life jacket or a life ring. While that was happening, Derek turned on the engine and dropped the sail so that he could turn the boat around, and then rough winds made the sail come directly at Derek, knocking him overboard before he could throw out any flotation devices. Nobody knows what happened on the Cause 2, and the official explanation is that these 3 men, one of which being an experienced sailor, managed to three-stooge themselves overboard. I can't say what happened. All I know is that it seems unlikely. Another thing that seems unlikely, though, until it was recorded, is rogue waves are waves that are considered twice the significant wave height of the area. But that's nerd stuff, and these big boys can get as big as 50 feet tall, or as tall as 12 Peter Dinklages. Either way, these behemoths can sink even the largest vessels, and until just a few decades ago, they were believed to be more sailor folklore, just like the Kraken, mermaids, and scurvy. But unlike those, scientists in the last few decades have confirmed and filmed several rogue waves. They can last several minutes or only a few. Who even knows how many shipwrecks have been caused by these towering waves? One mystery that could be partially explained by rogue waves: the St. Augustine Monster is a globster that was found washed ashore on Anastasia Beach in Florida. Because where else would something like this happen? This globster was found sprawled out on the beach and was about 21 feet long and 7 feet wide, or roughly the size of a U-Haul truck, but it weighs about twice as much at a giant 7 tons. After 2 boys discovered the monster, they got local physician Dr. DeWitt Webb. The first thing Webb did was to try to get it above the tide, which took several horses and men to accomplish. Upon observation, Webb believed it to be the tattered remains of a giant octopus, much like the Kraken, because it had 8 stumps on its body where he believed the tentacles had been. But a scientist known as Verrill disputed this and believed it to be a sperm whale. But all of that was finally put to rest in 2004 when DNA analysis confirmed that the pieces saved from this specific lobster were that of whale blubber. At least some mysteries could be solved, unlike that of the Mary Celeste. Ghost ships are always so interesting to me, because one minute people are just sailing along, and without any rhyme or reason, everybody seems to just vanish. One of the most famous ghost ships of all time is the Mary Celeste, because in November of 1872, the Mary Celeste, along with its captain Benjamin Briggs, and his wife and 2-year-old daughter, as well as the 8 crew, set sail from New York headed to Italy. Then, nearly a month later, a ship known as the De Gratier spotted the Celeste, and without any of its sails down and drifting nearly 400 miles off the coast of Portugal, which is pretty close to how far the Proclaimers would walk. When the De Gratier got aboard, they immediately noticed things were wrong. Nobody was on the ship, and the ship was undamaged. The only thing out of place was a missing lifeboat. And from there, the theory started. Why would an experienced captain leave a perfectly good ship and go on a lifeboat with his toddler, wife, and 8 other men? There seems to be no logical answer. There are a lot of theories. Some of my favorites are that there was a Kraken attack because there was reportedly a large gash on the front of the ship that they couldn't figure out how it got there. Maybe the Kraken bit the boat and started pulling people in, and in an attempted escape, they took the lifeboat. Or the explosion theory. If you want to go and watch Wendigoon's video, it explains it very well. The Celeste has a crazy background too. From sudden illnesses that kill the captain, to insurance fraud, to entire crews missing. It's got it all. Another theory that could explain the crew's fate is Julia. In March of '99, in the Eastern Pacific, a large noise was heard from 3,000 miles away. Acoustic monitoring systems picked up the sound from far and wide, and it lasted about 15 seconds. We will play it for you now. It is believed to be an iceberg scraping across the ocean floor, but not much is known about the Julia noise. Science believes it's an iceberg, but science is lame. And I think it's a crazy monster that's warning us what's to come, but I guess I'll let you decide. Maybe Julia was even telling our next subject that he better watch out. The 2003 Great White Incident. In 2003, a 9-foot-long great white was tagged and being monitored while it was swimming on its merry way, when suddenly it got pulled down 1,900 feet. When the shark washed ashore and the tag was recovered, they found that it had a temperature change similar to entering a digestive system. Scientists say the internal temperature was too low for a killer whale and too high for a shark unless it was massive. The leading theory is that an even bigger great white got to her. I'm not sure how big a shark has to be to eat a 9-foot shark, and I don't want to jump in and figure that out, because our next subject tells you why, when you spot a sea monster, you stay in the boat. During World War I, the German U-boat, the UB-85, suddenly surrendered to a British vessel that had not fired a single shot at them, and their explanation is astounding. The German officer, who willingly surrendered before the fight even began, said that a creature had horns, small eyes, large glinting teeth, and was so heavy that when it accidentally bumped the submarine, it made it list sideways before it turned around and bit the gun clean off the vessel before swimming away. This incident has been chalked up to a variety of things. Some British officers say that they sank the U-boat and that it's just a legend. Others say that this was a story made up by a captain to make himself seem more interesting. And unfortunately, records around this time were scarce, so there's no way to confirm the validity of any of these claims. But we all know this is clearly a 30-foot long saltwater crocodile, and the British government is just too scared to fight it. And who do you think would win? Julia, the super shark, or this giant croc? The Bahamas Road is located off the coast of the Bahamas. They are a roughly 0.8-mile stretch of long limestone rectangles that have been carbon dated to anywhere between 2,700 years old to 3,500 years old. This is so interesting to me because science can't tell if these are man-made or somehow naturally occurring. At first glance, you would just assume they're man-made because of how well cut they are, but there are no chisel marks, so we can't even be sure of that. Many theories about the road exist. Some think it was supposed to be some sort of foundation for a structure long forgotten, and some say it's a road to Atlantis. The Bimini Road is a perfect example of something that deserves to be on this iceberg because we have no idea why it's there or even how it was made. Another thing that we know nothing about is the Stron Beast is another globster on this list, but this one has no conclusion. In 1808 on Stronsay Island off the coast of Scotland, a 55-foot long but only about 4-foot wide serpentine creature was found washed ashore on the coast. It was decomposed and missing part of its tail. It also had 6 wing-like appendages. 2 scientists had a good look at this thing and came up with 2 completely opposite opinions. John Barclay believed that this was a new species of giant sea serpent that had yet to be recorded based on the evidence he found and what the locals had said to him. Everett Home, on the other hand, had seen the beast and believed it to be a basking shark that had greatly deteriorated. Later, many scientists believe Home to be correct. The issue I have with this is that a large basking shark is only about 25 feet long, so not even half the size of the beast. These globsters seriously freak me out. How things this large can be out there and we know nothing about them is really spooky. Speaking of things that couldn't be identified, purple orbs. A lot of stories on this iceberg have been older, but this one is definitely the newest, because in 2016, scientists discovered a bright purple orb floating 5,300 feet below the surface. The orb is only about 2 inches long. This weird brain-looking purple thing to this day has not been identified. They believe it's some kind of mollusk, but no mollusk like it has ever been seen before. This one's a little bit anticlimactic, but hopefully the mystery gets solved and we can make a more in-depth video about it. Another mystery science can't figure out is blue whale sounds. All around the world, for the last several years, scientists have noted that blue whales are making lower and lower pitch sounds, and scientists have no clue why. Theories range from noise pollution to large changes in population or even a new mating technique. Once again, it's another ongoing story with no satisfying conclusion. But I think I would change my tune after our next subject. The 1968 submarine disappearances. In 1968, not 1, not 2, but 4 submarines went missing. The first of these was the INS Dakar, which went missing off the coast of England in January. The wreckage wasn't found until nearly 30 years later, in 1999. 69 men were lost. 2 days later, off the southern coast of France, almost the exact same thing happened to the Minerva, but this one wasn't found until nearly 50 years later in 2019. 45 men were lost that day. Then, in March, the Soviet craft K-129 went missing, and curiously enough, the Soviets quickly gave up on the search. But the CIA believed it had classified documents and decided to search and found it in August of the same year. And last and most interesting is the USS Scorpion. This was an American sub that was supposed to be doing surveillance on a Soviet Union submarine. The last message sent by the sub said it had found another vessel and would be tailing it. The craft has never been heard from again, and due to the nuclear material on the sub, its wreckage site is a radioactive zone. There's some really good theories for this one, and at some point Bones and I will make an entire video about these subs, diving into all the theories and situations they could have encountered. Maybe a reason for these disappearances is Upsweep. In August of 1991, a sound was heard all throughout the Pacific Ocean. It's a long, upsweeping sound where the source is unknown, but it's loud enough to be heard from one end of the Pacific to the other. Oddly enough, it is a seasonal sound that gets louder in the spring and fall, but quieter in the winter and summer. Scientists are unsure why the sound changes based on the seasons. Another interesting tidbit is that every year since we've discovered it, it has gotten progressively quieter. Scientists believe it's an underground volcano making the noise, but scientists can't be sure. Well, I'm no scientist, so I'm sure that it's just a sleeping Leviathan snoring, and when it wakes up, we are all going to be spooked. If the Upsweep had a baby, though, it would definitely be the Monto Monster. In 2008, 4 friends were looking for a spot to sit on the beautiful beaches of Rhinestein Estate Park, where one of them spotted what was a weird-looking creature. So they walked up, and upon further explanation, none of them could tell what they were looking at, so they took a picture. Many speculations have been made about the monster, from it being a turtle to a rodent, a dog, a coyote, a sheep, and even a raccoon. But all of these have different issues with them, and by the time a cryptozoologist was able to come look at the monster, it had disappeared. Once again, many rumors about his disappearance range from theft to washed away to quickly decomposed to a full-blown government cover-up. One of the more interesting things about this is the creature was reported to have no blood, and it was found very close to Plum Island, which is an animal disease research center. A few experts say it is clearly a raccoon in a state of decomposition from being in the ocean for so long. But the problem with that is its legs appear to be too long to be a raccoon. I guess we may never know what the Monto Monster was or why the government definitely covered it up. But another thing the government definitely covered up was the U28 Monster. On July 31st, a man with a name and a title that is entirely too long, Kapitän Leutnant Friar George Gunther von Forstner, was the captain of the U28, one of the most successful subs in World War I. In its 4-year career, the U28 sunk 40 vessels. One of those vessels was the SS Iberian. The Iberian was a merchant steamer that was headed for Boston before being sunk by Kapitän Leutnant Friar George Gunther von Forstner. The Iberian sunk stern first with the bow aiming directly into the air. Kapitän Leutnant Friar George Gunther von Forstner recounts the events as follows. After about 25 seconds, there was a violent explosion which shot debris out of the water. Amongst the debris was a giant aquatic animal who was shot about 8 feet out of the water. Kapitän Leutnant Friar George Gunther von Forstner and 6 other crew, including officers, the chief engineer, and the helmsman, witnessed the creature. None of the crew could identify the creature, but all agreed that it was about 6 feet long with 4 webbed-like feet, with a long pointed head and tail. They all agreed that it looked like an aquatic crocodile. Upon landing, it sank after about 15 seconds, and the crew was unable to photograph it. Kapitän Leutnant Friar George Gunther von Forstner didn't report the incident until after the war, which his detractors used against him, but he stated that it simply was not important during wartime. Detractors will also cite that none of the crew ever confirmed it, but none of the men made it through the war except for Kapitän Leutnant Friar George Gunther von Forstner. 5 experienced seamen couldn't identify this monster, and it makes one wonder what is hiding in the depths of the world's largest graveyard. Call of the Deep, which is similar to Call of the Void, is an intrusive thought that many divers have when they sit on the edge of an underwater cliff and think, maybe I should just go a little deeper. The most famous of this is the Blue Hole in Belize. Just off the shore of Belize, you can see a large hole where the ocean suddenly drops off to 125 meters deep. Once you get to about 30 meters deep, you notice that there's a small light towards the bottom of the hole. This is known as the arch, and many people have said that when you look down at the arch from the cliff, it has a sort of power that draws you in. The mystery of what that mysterious light might be is what draws the curious minds to go and investigate, but this unfortunately turns deadly. If you want to learn more about the Blue Hole, we will link an interesting documentary about it and the people who have passed. Please don't listen to the call, though. because at the bottom might just be. Quackers is yet another mysterious noise, but this one is deeper on the list due to its story, because one day a Soviet submarine was going about its business when they suddenly started hearing a frog-like sound following the sub. But nothing appeared on the sonar, which led the captain to believe that it wasn't a man-made object. After being followed for a while, the captain even went off course to try and find what was making the mysterious noise, and after a bit he just headed back to land. Then they heard one last quack. Whether monster or man, the ocean always has another mystery, like our next subject. The Sea People invasions happened between 1200 and 900 BCE. They were a people who were mostly lost to time, and they ravaged through Egypt and its surrounding areas for hundreds of years. But their origins are a mystery today. And although it is believed that the Egyptians knew who they were and where they were from, it was never really recorded and assumed to have just been common knowledge to an average Egyptian. This is definitely a subject we'll be making a full video about, because we love the history, theories, and events that we have to go through to properly explain all of it. And this is definitely going to be one to look out for in the future. Something these mysterious people might have believed, though, is the cosmic ocean is a religious and mythological motif used in plenty of religions. The core belief is that before the Earth, there was a primordial ocean, which gave life to the whole universe. This is also usually the means to the end for many religions, due to massive floodings, or the sky, which they believe to be the upper sea, falling back onto us. Many of these beliefs thought that we have come from the cosmic ocean, and we will once again be forcibly returned to her. Makes you really think of the way we've been treating our world lately. And unfortunately, our next subject was spawned by the cosmic ocean. The Black Demon. For generations in Mexico and off the coast of California and the Gulf of Mexico, there have been hundreds of reports of a near 50-foot-long all-black shark that is said to be extremely aggressive. And although there has never been a confirmed sighting, doesn't disprove much, because for decades, half-eaten whales have been washing ashore these coasts. Theories for what this shark may be vary. Some say it's a megalodon, like in Tier 1. But scientists believe that if it does exist, it's probably a great white that has grown to its full potential and has hypermelanistic, which is having too much melanin, or the opposite of albinism. But if you remember back to Tier 4, where there was a 9-foot-long great white that was rapidly pulled down and the temperatures for stomachs didn't make sense, the best theory I've seen for that, the Black Demon got a hold of her and drug her down in one clean chomp. This may also explain what happened to our next subject. 2,600 feet down at the bottom of the Gulf of Mexico, there lies a ship that history forgot. We know surprisingly a lot, yet so little about this wreck. For instance, we know it was made between the 1800 and 1830, due to the fact that it was made with eastern pine wood, which is only made in Virginia. And the ship was sheathed in copper, which means it is unlikely to be a merchant ship due to the cost. And since there were no weapons, it couldn't have been a battleship, so it was almost certainly a trade ship, and an expensive one at that. But we don't know how it sank, who was on it, or even what it was transporting, or why it seems so cursed. In 2001, an Exxon oil rig accidentally drilled a hole right through the previously undiscovered ship and immediately reported it to authorities. Then, between 2002 and 2003, they tried to make 6 separate trips down to the ship with unmanned submersibles. 5 of the 6 malfunctioned when getting close to the ship, and 3 of them were never recovered. Even when the one did get to the ship, it was only able to get a small piece of copper that had no markings.
They haven't tried to get any more samples in 20 years, which makes one wonder what this mysterious cursed ship is hiding. Speaking of things that are hiding, Phantom Islands. Over the course of history, there have been many documented cases of islands that are on maps for decades. Then, when people go to explore them, they seem to just disappear. I've heard a few theories regarding these islands, the most plausible of which is that there's some sort of signature for the cartographer. That way, if someone tries to copy the fake island, they would know that they were using the original map's design. Some of these are incredibly interesting, though, like Thule, an island that has been reported and recorded by a ton of Greek and Roman maps and in literature. It was usually depicted as having sea monsters swimming around it and was considered to be very dangerous to travel to. Then, eventually on maps, it just disappeared. Modern people believe it might have been Ireland, but that's boring. And to be honest, Bones told me that one of those crazy sea monsters just up and ate it. The Immortal Jellyfish, or scientifically known as Turritopsis donai, are a small species of jellyfish at only 35 millimeters in height. But for what they lack in size, they make up in their incredibly unique genetic makeup, because, as their nickname would tell you, they are immortal. Through a process called transdifferentiation, they are able to completely reset their biological clock by reverting to their previous life cycle. They do this to not age or even to grow back missing tentacles. The easiest way for a normal person to think about it is imagine if a butterfly lost one of its wings and then went back to being a caterpillar so it could go through its life cycle again. Since being discovered in the Mediterranean in the 80s, they have migrated all over the world. And I wonder if in time when we discover more about these, if we will be able to implement it medically someday. Something else I hope we can learn more about is the Milky Sea phenomenon. In 1864, a Confederate ship that was trying to pirate off the Horn of Africa, when around 8 p.m. they started to sail over a large patch of white water. Thinking they were going over a submerged ridge, they put down a weighted line that did not hit a surface. Then they quickly sailed out of those waters. Most had assumed that they were folklore, like when Herman Melville described them as a bad omen in his little-known novel, Moby Dick. It wasn't until 1985 when a Navy research vessel got lucky enough to encounter the phenomenon and were able to get a sample of this mysterious white ocean. After some research, they believed it was an algae colony that had bloomed and died, and then a bioluminescent bacteria was eating the algae bloom. Then, in 2019, a satellite spotted the phenomenon, and it lasted for 45 days and stretched 40,000 square miles, which is roughly the size of Iceland. It has been said that when going over the Milky Sea at night, it is noticeably brighter than normal. Although they do know that the bacteria are what caused this phenomenon, they're unsure how so many can appear in such massive numbers. Maybe one day we'll know, but until then, we have. Vertical migration is a very well known about and documented event that happens every single day, where plankton, shrimp, fish, and many other creatures come closer to the surface to get safer food from themselves before migrating back down to their more normal depths. This, on the other hand, is a theory that some believe that as this happens and things begin to migrate up, their natural predators must follow them to get food. With this theory in mind, it would explain why most large, mysterious creatures are seen at night, because they are abandoning their normal hunting grounds to chase their prey. Now, some people may say, well, people tend to see things at night, and that might explain it. But that's dumb and not as fun to think about. Something else that isn't fun to think about is Heraclean. Around 101 BC, a port town off the northern coast of Egypt went missing, and wasn't found for nearly 1,300 years. Because in 2000, archaeologist Frank Gaudio discovered the lost city, and for 13 years, him and his team excavated the forgotten city. And in the process, they found 64 shipwrecks, which led them to believe that this was most likely a mandatory port for trade between the Nile and Mediterranean. There, they found weights from Greece that were used for measurements that had not been found in Egypt before. They also found some truly haunting statues fully submerged that are equal parts beautiful and terrifying. This is such a good reminder of why the ocean is so terrifying. For years, this port was integral to Egypt. Then one day when the ocean decided to reclaim it, humanity had no choice but to forget it for 1,300 years. Although this mystery has been solved, others haven't, such as the underground ocean. Have you ever wondered, where did the ocean come from? Yeah, me either, until I had to research this. It seems impossible to imagine our Earth without the ocean. But a long time ago, and I mean a really long time ago, the Earth didn't have water. It was just a sad, ugly rock like the rest of the galaxy. But scientists used to believe that sometime in ancient history, an icy meteor hit the Earth, which created our ocean and brought life to our beautiful blue marble. But more recently, scientists have a new theory. They believe that 400 miles below our Earth's surface sinks ringwoodite, a mysterious blue rock that is full of mineral-heavy water. But in order for this water to escape the rock, it has to go under an enormous amount of pressure, and it basically sweats the water out of the rock. Based on some studies, if this theory and scientists' calculations are correct, then there could be 3 times more water under the Earth's mantle than there currently is in our ocean. Makes one think about the mysteries we didn't even know existed yet. And the very last thing on this iceberg is the ocean at night. This theory is my all-time favorite, and you know it's good when it gets labeled a conspiracy theory. At an undisclosed time off the coast of Aden, the US Navy had built an artificial sun in order to find a cleaner, unlimited source of energy when put in the ocean. But in 2010, WikiLeaks leaked a document from a Russian general that claimed that the reason that 82 earthquakes had happened off the coast of Aden in the course of 2 days was because of a vortex opened. After that, 27 countries' navies responded to this. Seems weird. The theory is that when they put the false sun into the ocean, due to vertical migration, it caused some extremely large, forgotten monsters to the surface, and the navies had to come dispatch whatever it was. The official story, on the other hand, is that 27 countries' militaries were there in response to some Somali pirates. Look, all I'm saying is I saw Captain Phillips, and 1 Navy SEAL team were able to take out the Somali pirates. I think 27 countries is a bit overkill. I don't know about you, but something smells fishy. But I guess that is common in this profession. Thank you for watching this iceberg. We're glad we could bring this to you and hope that you can find some enjoyment in some of our other videos as well. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share this with a friend who believes in the ocean at night. We make new videos every 2 weeks, so be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to see those. This has been the world's largest graveyard, and remember, stay safe out there, friends.